Welcome to FPB's Meet the Candidates. This Cable 10 series allows you, the viewer and voter, to get a closer look at candidates that we have running to be our leaders. This is all leading up to the general election, which is going to be on November 8th, and so this is your chance to get informed. We've taken questions via social media and through emails from participants throughout the community so that we can learn more about how our candidates feel about topics that are important to us. So we're going to get started today. Our guest today is Grayson Vandegrift, and he is running for state representative of the 56th district here in Kentucky. And so we've got him here, so let's talk to him. How are you doing?
Doing great, Kathy. Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. So I'm going to start out by just giving you the opportunity to tell us a little bit about yourself, because this is your first foray into state politics. Is that correct?
That's right. That's
Okay.
right. I've been a local leader on the local level. I've been I was a one-term council member, and I've been a two-term mayor in the city of Midway in Woodford County. And I'm wrapping up the end of my 2 terms this year as mayor. I'm a husband and a father of 2 young children, a 6-year-old and a 1-year-old. And I've been a small business owner, and I understand the struggles that are facing everyday Kentuckians. And I'm in this race because I believe that I'm the best candidate for it. I have a romantic passion for public service, and I really believe that it would be great if more and more of our state candidates had run on the local level first. I think it teaches you so much about how to cooperate because we literally run in nonpartisan races. We don't focus on whether we're Republican or Democrat. We focus on getting the problem solved. And we are the ones who are so, in Midway, if there's an issue, I'm going to hear about it, and I'm not going to be able to escape from anybody if I wanted to, which I don't, because they're going to see me on the street, and that's the kind of state representative I would be as well. I'll be very accessible. If people want to get a hold of me, even if they miss me, I will get back to them. I will not leave a call or an email unanswered. That's how I've been the last 10 years, and that's how I intend to be if I'm elected state representative.
Okay. Well, was there a time previously when you thought about running for state rep and then you decided not to?
I almost ran for this race in 2020.
Okay. So what has changed that made you decide to go ahead and do it?
I didn't feel like my family was really ready for it, but the main thing is that, I had so much encouragement to do it, but, I kept, this thing kept bugging me. Like, I had just been reelected mayor in Midway when I had to kind of make the decision. And I just thought, too many politicians these days love to run in the middle of another term so that if they lose, they have something at least to fall back on.
Sure.
And I just felt like, and I don't want to disparage anybody from doing that, but that's just not me.
Right.
I ran for a 4-year term as my second term as mayor, and darn it, I'm going to complete that term, and I'm going to complete the duties that I said I would to the people of Midway. So ultimately, I decided not to run for it. But I felt it's so important that we have good leadership on this level in Frankfort and advocate on the behalf of the people in the eastern half of Franklin County and Woodford County and in the western parts of Jessamine County that include Keene and Wilmore and those areas. And I'm a proven leader on the local level. I believe in transparency and being accessible, and I believe in doing what's right for the average, hard-working, everyday Kentuckian, and I'll never work for special interests, and we see way too much of that going on in the state legislature right now.
Well, you talked about how it's important, like as a mayor, it's nonpartisan.
Right.
That's not the case here.
Nope.
So you're going to be at the state level.
Sure.
Would you agree that the political atmosphere, not here in Kentucky, but nationwide, is more divided than possibly ever?
Yeah, and I'll be honest with you. I mean, I'm a big history buff. We have been divided a lot in our country. I mean, we've gone to war with each other for sure. So I do think that it's important that we remind ourselves that part of democracy sometimes we do debate. What I am concerned with right now is the amount of political violence that I see talked about, especially in social media circles. So yes, what I'm trying to enter is a much different level, but we can debate and still be Kentuckians. We can debate and still be Americans.
Okay. Well, my question is, as a new member, what can you do in the legislature to help build consensus?
Well, I think personally, just the ability to know how to talk to people, because again, I have worked with city council members who we don't see eye to eye, and I mean, we, as conservative as can be, or I've talked to some who are as liberal as can be, we may not see completely eye to eye, but if you're able to listen to each other, the thing that I'll tell you right now, I will not vote 100% with my party like my opponent has. I don't think it's I don't think anyone is doing a true service to their constituents if they vote with one party the entire time. So the one thing I'm going to do is I'll be an independent voice. And yes, we are members of our caucus if we're elected, and those things are going to be borne out. But you know, I'll be a new voice in Frankfort that will continue, no matter how high the heat gets, I will continue to say we need to step back and remember that we are Kentuckians first and foremost. And if we can't agree to that basic principle, then I think we turn back to the people and say, look, we are trying to make deals on your behalf, and always let the people apply the pressure, because I think the people of Kentucky truly want us to work together, and I can be a new voice for that.
Well, you have an uphill battle.
Sure.
Because as a Democrat, you know, the Republicans hold supermajorities.
They do.
In both chambers. So how do you plan to navigate those waters and find wins for your district as a member of, you know, minority caucus?
Well, again, you know, I think that the key is that we go in and we talk about issues that can apply to both sides. I mean, the truth of the matter is most Kentuckians probably agree on 80 to 85% of the issues. Mm-hmm. So I want to start by focusing on those issues. What the current supermajority in Frankfort has done, they focused on wedge issues. They focused on issues that they know can rile up the base and can get people talking. But in reality, it really doesn't affect most Kentuckians. I mean, we need to be talking about how to fund public education. I know there are Republicans who believe in funding public education. Mm-hmm. So I think we start right there. I think we start talking about public education. There are folks who think public education is indoctrination. Folks, I've been in these schools. My sister teaches in these schools. All they're doing is working hard. They're trying to educate these children, prepare them for the 21st century. And if we want to crumble Kentucky, the best way to do it is to continue to defund our public schools. And I know there are Republicans who would agree with me on that. I think we start there with issues that we can win on, and then once we continue to build some consensus and pass some bills that can help the average Kentuckian who's struggling, mm-hmm. I think we can build momentum from there. I really do. But I think it starts with an early victory, and let's go for some of the low-hanging fruit instead of focusing on these wedge issues that just continue to rile everybody up.
Okay. Well, let's talk a little bit about education, because the Kentucky Legislature approved 8% across-the-board raises for state government workers.
And for themselves.
But educators across the state are disappointed that General Assembly did not approve an adequate increase in state funding for across-the-board raises for teachers. So do you feel that by doing this, the legislature is worsening the risk of teacher shortages and, you know, weakening our education system, which, you know, as everybody agrees, is of vital importance?
Yes, I mean, it's in the Constitution for a reason. I mean, the Kentucky Constitution established public education for a reason, and the truth of the matter is they've already weakened the public mm-hmm. education system. They've already contributed to the teacher shortage. We have the worst teacher shortage we've seen in our lifetimes right now. We have people stepping in. We have custodians stepping in to fill in classrooms. I mean, that is a travesty in the 21st century Kentucky that we're having to do that. First of all, those custodians have incredibly important jobs as mm-hmm. on their own. Mm-hmm. Now we're asking them to do 2 jobs in some schools. It's preposterous. So the push has been to divert this money from public education to these charter schools. My question is why my opponent voted to do this is beyond me, because it will send thousands, hundreds of thousands, maybe one day eventually, if we don't stop this, millions of dollars out of the 56 districts public schools to a pilot program in northern Kentucky, hundreds of miles from here. I have no problem with charter schools. I have no problem with private schools, but those should be paid for privately. Mm-hmm. Public money should stay in public education. And I believe that it could be argued it's unconstitutional to do otherwise, but there's no doubt they've already weakened the public education. And it befuddles me because it gives every kid a chance. Whether you are poor, whether you are a minority, whether you are whatever it may be, wherever you come from in life, it gives you that unfettered start in the race of life. I don't understand why we wouldn't want to make sure every kid has the best available to them in Kentucky.
Well, right now the state has a record amount of money in its rainy day fund and surplus. Would you commit to putting some of that money towards education?
Yes. I believe we should give teachers what they're due. It's crazy to me that, again, my opponent voted to give himself a legislative pay raise. Well, this is a part-time legislature, so that will make the legislature paid twice as much as the average Kentucky part-time job. Yet teachers have just come through the most difficult part of their careers, those last 2 or 3 years getting through the pandemic, and they are truly heroes for what they've done. To not give them the raise felt mean. It felt spiteful because they didn't like them protesting outside, which was their First Amendment right to do in the first place. I fully believe in giving teachers the raise they're due. And I'll go further. I believe in giving retirees a cost of living adjustment, which they haven't had in 11 years.
That's my next question.
Well, perfect.
So again, Frankfort is the home to more state retirees than any other community. Cost of living adjustment the ability to do that lies with the General Assembly. The last adjustment took effect in July 2011.
Yeah.
And some retirees believe they are paying the price for lawmakers' past fiscal mismanagement of their pensions. So as a legislator that would be representing the folks here in Franklin County, what kind of commitment can you make regarding protecting the state retirement fund and supporting a cost of living adjustment?
We have to fund the ARC.
Yeah.
If we fund the ARC every year, we can continue to uphold the pension system, and we can take some of our rainy day funds and we can put more and more in as we go. I know a little bit about a surplus. We've had a huge surplus in Midway. You can spread that money out, and we need to shore up our pension system. What I am so afraid of, I've been in charge of public employees in the CERS system in Midway as a mayor, is that if they get into this knowing they'll have a good pension to fall back on, and by gutting these pensions and making them so perilous, we're losing good state workers, which people will notice more and more if our services start to fail. People rely on these services. So I believe in continually funding the pension, funding the ARC, and then, yes, we should use some of these rainy day funds to shore it up more, but we've got to give a cost of living adjustment to our retirees, because what are we saying to our current employees if we're not taking care of those who came before them?
Let's get back on education for
Sure.
just a minute, because an education bill that passed this year was Senate Bill 1. And it started out as a provision to give district superintendents the power to set curriculum and hire principals, which had been previously made by the School-Based Decision-Making Council. Why was that important to do? Do you agree with that move?
No, here's what I don't understand is I hear my Republican friends in Frankfort talk about home rule a lot. They talk about that the states' rights and local rights, unless they just don't like what they're doing locally, then they step in. I feel like this was an assault on home rule. I think site-based decision councils are one of the best examples of home rule. The people who their kids go to these schools, they've worked in these schools, they've volunteered in these schools, they're on the PTO boards. They should have the first say in these matters. That's home rule. So I think it's hypocrisy to do what they did and to try and move it away from these site-based decision councils. And I feel like it was spiteful as much as anything.
Well, the bill then added restrictions on how history can be taught, especially concerning race, directing educators to teach American history in a way that some teachers and historians say whitewashes the role of racism in shaping society. It also includes a list of historical documents that middle and high schools must embed into the curriculum. Do you have concerns about these restrictions, or that the provision itself inserts itself into the decision-making process for schools at the local level?
It's another example of government overreach and government going where it doesn't belong. And we should never, it doesn't matter what side of the aisle we're on, we should never applaud government overreach. I've had a business with employees. I'm a local official with employees. You have to trust the people who are doing the jobs. I don't go up to our street supervisor and tell him that I'm going to run the backhoe today because I'm the mayor, I know what I'm doing. No, he knows what he's doing better than I do in that sense. I need to trust him to do that job. We need to trust our history teachers who have studied this, who are not afraid of looking at hard truths and then moving on. If we learn from our past, we won't repeat it. And we can move together and we can be a united Kentucky. And I know we can get that. But issues like this are purposely driving wedges between people. And that's why I think they did it in the first place. I think they want to fire up their base instead of try to turn. We all, I think, have a responsibility in this democracy to turn down the temperature a little bit right now. And let's trust the people who are doing the jobs of educating our children. If our history teachers have studied this for years, made a career, they're published in some cases, they know what they're talking about. I don't understand why a state legislator thinks that they know better than them, especially when they're not even a teacher or a history teacher. So, no, I think it's a total mistake, and I think it's weakened education. And I think it'll continue to weaken education.
Okay. Senate Bill 83, passed by the legislature this year, bans trans girls from participating in girls' sports from 6th grade through college. Do you support that measure, and why do you think that was important to do? Do you see any possible future consequences from this, like lawsuits or how it affects our youth?
Well, pattern is emerging. It's a wedge issue. It's an issue that I've knocked on over 1,000 doors just by myself, and not including volunteers in the 56th district. Not one of us has heard this as a concern at the door. not one of us. We're hearing tons of other things that are of concern. But here's the way I look at things. I'm a man of faith. I believe what my Bible says, that God made us all, we're all precious in his sight. And I believe what Jesus said, that what you do to the least of mine, you do to me. And the truth of the matter is that these spiteful bills that are going after people who are struggling to find out who they are in this world, not only will probably lead to lawsuits, like you said, but why are we wanting to basically make children feel awful when they have some of the highest suicide rates we're talking about of any demographic? Why are we wanting to pass bills to make them feel awful when we need to fund essential services? We need to fund education. We need to shore up our pension system. I mean, these are the real problems that are happening. Mm-hmm. It's another wedge issue. It's basically playing politics with every little thing. And if I'm elected to state legislature, you're not going to see me doing these big, fancy, splashy things. You're going to see me doing the hard work for the people of Kentucky every single day.
Well, we want to talk about wedge issues. Well, there's a big one.
Yeah.
When the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade, it put that decision back on the states. Mm-hmm. So what do you think is the legislative's role regarding reproductive health care, and do you think that that is an appropriate role?
No. So again, let's go back to government overreach.
Okay.
Me and my wife lost a child in utero at 18 weeks in 2018, and they had already passed, the state legislature, the Republican majority, supermajority, had already passed some extremely, some very extreme bills that put themselves in the doctor's office. I felt like there were legislators in the doctor's office with us because what we were dealing with was a child that had hydrops fetalis. We wanted her very much. She would have been our second child at the time, and we thank God for our two children that we have. But Audrey, as we named her, had a condition incompatible with life. But sometimes those children are born, and they die horrific deaths. And you watch them die, and they suffer. And I can't imagine why anybody thinks that is something we should watch happen. If the pregnancy had gone on and gotten towards 30 weeks and gotten towards even closer to 35, which would have been, I mean, the 6 weeks we dealt with the diagnosis felt like a year, first of all, and the trauma my wife still lives with, and I'm sure I do too to some degree, but I think it's even worse for a mother, of course. If Audrey had been born, it would have been horrific. So we would have had to make a decision before then. But the state legislature made clear, and our doctors had to look into this because these laws were all new. They wanted to just been passed when all this was happening. And the doctor came back and said, we won't be able to perform a D&C in the office if it goes past a certain date. She'll have to go to the state's only abortion clinic. And I was just thinking about how state legislators, in their infinite wisdom, had passed a law that would force my wife, who wanted our baby, to probably be called names or spat upon at an abortion clinic. Mm-hmm. That is the unintended consequence of when they went after what was, at that time, just a wedge issue. Now it's not a wedge issue. Now they've gotten what they wanted. They are the dog that caught the car. And now they're going to get women killed with this trigger law. It is that dangerous. This is government overreach. We had a 20-week ban, which I know didn't make everybody happy. But you know what? That was working a lot better than this trigger law was working. This will get women killed. And frankly, what if a woman has an ectopic pregnancy? It is not clear whether that's actually going to be covered in this trigger law, whether they can abort that child. An ectopic pregnancy, not only is it not viable, it is one of the most dangerous things that can happen to a woman. Mm-hmm. We need to have a sensible solution. My opponent believes in no exceptions. He doesn't believe in exceptions for rape or incest. If a 10-year-old girl gets raped in Kentucky, his vision of Kentucky is she must carry out the pregnancy. I cannot imagine the physical danger that she'd be put in. I cannot imagine the emotional trauma the rest of her life, which was, she already lost control of her body once when she was raped or a victim of incest. And now the state legislature is going to tell her she loses control of her body and what to do forward. I'm categorically opposed to that. There should absolutely be exceptions, especially in these most awful cases. And of course, in the health of the mother. I think it's a disastrous thing. I think the Republicans know it's disastrous. This is why you see candidates scrubbing their websites right now of issues that they once stood firmly behind. But my opponent he's dug in. He does not believe in any exceptions. And I just don't see it that way. And I think we have to find sensible solutions to these problems because this is going to be a major issue in Kentucky. I'm afraid we're going to see more and more heartbreak the longer this goes on.
Can you explain to us what the Yes for Life amendment is, and that's going to be on the ballot
Yeah.
for people here in the fall, and explain why you support it or not?
I do not support the amendment.
Okay.
It is an amendment that basically, if you vote yes, you are saying that you want the Constitution to explicitly say that there is no right to an abortion in Kentucky and no right to funding for it. Now, my opponent supports it so much that he's got it framed on a wall in his office. This is the exact same bill that failed in Kansas 60-40. You could argue Kansas is more conservative than Kentucky is. And it will fail here in Kentucky, too, because it is extreme. Kentuckians are not extremists. This is an extremist amendment. This was put on the ballot just to get certain turnout up. That's why they did it. And they put it on the ballot long before Roe was even overturned. They probably didn't realize these things would coincide. And I bet they're panicking right now. They should be. Because the bottom line is most Kentuckians believe there should be some exceptions to this, that we can't just do this. I mean, again, for the young girl who's raped, for the woman who has an ectopic pregnancy, and there are thousands of other examples. It's one thing that me and my wife learned, that we're just one of thousands of examples of the complexities that happen in this. So I support voting no. I encourage people to vote no. I believe the no vote will win on November 8th. But it's important that people understand that what this would do is basically say there's no right to it. And so there may be, I mean, we talk about going backwards. I mean, women's health care will go backwards if this law is passed.
So what's the difference between where we are right now and then if it's passed?
Well, basically where we are right now is a law, but the amendment will literally change the state constitution.
Okay.
And that is something that I mean, once you do that,
Yeah.
I mean, there's really no going back.
It's hard to go back.
Yeah.
Okay. Tax code.
Yeah, that's another. I love it.
There's been an effort in the tax code changes to move toward a more consumption-based tax code, expanding the sales tax and reducing individual income taxes. What's your opinion on these moves, and how do you plan to be involved in that discussion?
It was an election year stunt. It was a way to try and say we cut taxes. Of course, they waited till 2022 to do it for a reason. They also made a huge mistake, and Kansas tried this a few years ago, and it was a disaster. They're making the bet that we're going to bring in the kind of revenues that Texas and Tennessee and Florida do, and that we're not going to have the same calamity Kansas had. And unfortunately, I'm very certain that they're going to be wrong on this. So in this income cut tax, by the way, folks like me and you and those of us here, we might get, it looks like on average about $300 a year. The wealthiest 1% of Kentuckians will get $11,000 a year. It was a giveaway of our massive surplus, which you mentioned, our historic surplus. It's a giveaway to the rich. And it's going to lead to more and more, because what's going to happen is it's going to create a budget deficit. It's going to be such a shame to have this surplus, and then suddenly we're going to have a budget deficit because of this. And we're going to have to raise those sales taxes more and more, which will affect poor and working families and middle-class families more, because it's a flat rate, what you pay. So if someone's a millionaire, paying that 6 cents, or that 6%, it's not as big of a deal to somebody who makes $300 a week. So what's going to end up happening is that they're going to force these higher sales taxes. And in this bill is higher sales taxes, but it's going to get worse and worse if we don't fix it. I believe it needs to be reversed. As mayor of Midway, I'm proud to say we cut regressive taxes. We cut the taxes that affect the working families and middle-class families the most. We cut property taxes by 40%. We cut sewer rates by 25%. And we didn't sacrifice services. We were improving services because we had a surplus. And that's how you can cut taxes in a surplus, is focus on regressive taxes of the people who need it the most. They have made a huge gamble. The gamble already failed in Kansas. It bothers me when people make election year decisions not thinking about what happens after the election. And after the election, we're going to have to come to terms with the fact that we're going to be blowing a lot of our revenue. So I support lowering some regressive taxes, and I support lowering sales tax, especially as a way to combat inflation. But we shouldn't be messing with this income tax. It is too vital for our state's budget.
Okay. Well, speaking of the budget, the General Assembly should always be looking for ways that we can increase revenue here. Sports betting. Can you explain to me, because I have a hard time understanding the sports betting issue. It seems like we have some gambling, but gambling's not allowed. I don't understand it, but some options aren't at all. Right. So the issue, it got some traction in the General Assembly this year, but was eventually stalled out by Senate leadership. Do you support expanding the sports wagering for revenue? Legalize gambling, sports betting?
I do, because it's already happening. It's happening under the table right now, and we're not collecting tax revenue on it. It's also happening in just about every state around us. So if you want to go and spend your money in Indiana, you can. And that's revenue that we're losing. Indiana's gaining. And yes, we already have, to some degree, we already have some sports betting. It will increase revenue. I mean, it'll be significant. It'll be, tens and millions of dollars, possibly much more by the end of it. And sports betting is happening in almost every state in the country right now, and we're not seeing the ill effects that have been predicted. We should definitely, in doing so, set aside money for gambling addictions and those programs, absolutely. But we're leaving a lot of money on the table, and not only that, we're sending it across the border to other states.
Yep. Another thing
Sure.
is in March 2022, the House of Representatives voted 59-34 to pass a medical cannabis bill. This was the second time the full House ever voted on the issue and the second time that it passed, but then Senate leadership refused to even assign the bill to a committee, which killed the bill. So where are you on this issue, and do you support Senate leadership's position by not even introducing it?
No, what they're doing is a powerful few are making decisions against the will of the majority. The polling shows that Kentuckians favor medical marijuana, and I do too. My opponent voted against that bill in the House, but it still passed the House.
Yeah.
And I'll vote for that bill again. There are people who are suffering. I met a woman knocking on the door. Her son he had hurt his back in a car accident, and he got on opioids, and he finally was able to wean himself off by using marijuana, but he was going to other states to get the legal forms of it, and I guess at some point he couldn't get out of state, and he was in pain, and he got a bad batch of marijuana here that was laced with something, and it killed him. But if he had a legal dispensary where he could go to and get a prescription from a doctor for his pain, he would have been able to stay off opioids, and he might still be alive. There are people suffering. We have the ability to help ease their suffering. And medical marijuana has been proven to be safe and effective, especially for cancer patients, those who have trouble eating, and those who are in pain. So yes, absolutely, I support medical marijuana, like the majority of Kentuckians and the vast majority of those in the 56th district.
Okay. Just got one more question
Sure.
for you. If you get elected, what is the first bill you plan to file?
I think I would file a bill to give teachers the raises they deserve. I think that's exactly where I'd start. There's a long list. It's hard to pick just one, but that's probably where I would start.
Okay. Well, now I'm going to give you the opportunity to talk directly to our viewers and tell them why they need to vote for you.
Well, I want to thank you. I want to thank the Frankfurt Plant Board for this opportunity. My name is Grayson Vandegrift. I'm asking for your vote on November 8th. I've been a public servant on the local level. I'm a father of 2 young children. And you're not going to hear me say the cliche that you hear. You hear a lot of folks these days say, I'm not a politician. I'm not afraid of saying that. I am a politician. The point of saying that, we shouldn't try to ignore who we are. We should try to make the word politician mean something good. I want politician to mean public servant, someone who listens to you, to hear what you need, and to take action accordingly. And if I'm elected to state legislature, I will work for you and only you. My opponent voted for a bill he sponsored a bill that would eliminate property taxes for private jet and plane owners. Now, I'm sorry to those folks who own private jets and planes. I'm very happy for you, and you should continue to enjoy those. But I'm working for the average Kentuckian who needs help right now, and that's what I'll do in the state legislature. You can go to my website at graysonforky.com. You can also follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and I'm asking you to vote Vandegrift on November 8th.
Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate you taking the time. I know that our viewers appreciate it. They like to hear from our candidates. And to the viewers, I will remind you that this is all leading up to the general election on November 8th. So it's very important for you to get informed and then go vote. And after you vote, go home and turn on Channel 10, because we'll be giving you the live election results from the county clerk's office. So once again, I will tell you to go vote, use your voice, and we'll see you again next time.